What connects French architect Paul Gourdet with the historical center of Almaty? Why is the Zharkent Mosque the only surviving work of the Chinese architect Hon Pike? Where is Valikhanov's manor house Syrymbet located? Forgotten names and little-known facts, recent history and national color, all this is in the Grand Buildings program. Today in our program, history of Ascension Cathedral construction, engineering solutions of A.P. Zinkov, the use of temple in the Soviet period, recent history.
My name is Diego. I'm from Italy. It's my first time here in Kazakhstan and in Almaty. I was wondering about the internal, very rich and really amazing.
I'm Anne, I'm from London. We've just arrived this morning and we've just been looking around the cathedral today. It's very beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of some of the churches and cathedrals we saw in Russia last year. It's very different from the churches we have at home. It's a lot more ornate here and a lot more sort of stories that you can see.
My name is Joseph. I come from Jakarta, Indonesia. This is my first time to Kazakhstan and also Almaty. And I look around, I found this church is amazing and inside it's really beautiful.
In 2017, the Ascension Cathedral in Almaty celebrates its 110th anniversary. It is one of the highest wooden buildings in the world, the highest Orthodox wooden temple on the planet. The building was erected in record time from 1904 to 1907. It was designed by Paul Gourdet. The architect was born in French Burgundy. He graduated from the Imperial School of Occupations and Arts of Chalon-Marne. It remains a mystery what made him leave France. However, after arriving in the city of Verney, 24-year-old Paul made the way from a simple draftsman to a city architect who continuously had been in charge of all major city facilities for 20 years. This notebook had appeared. There were stories about Verney, where this essay about Gourdet was placed. Local history expert Nelia Bukitova devoted 2 books to Gourdet's contribution to the history of Almaty. He did much for our city, and during his lifetime, the city named the street where he lived after his name. He lived on the street after his name, and then in Soviet times, it was renamed as Krasin Street, now as Valikhanov Street. Paul Gourdet conceived 2 embodied traditions of Byzantine in cathedral, which are characterized by stone architecture. That was how his first project looked like. Experts find it similar to Sacré-Cœur Basilica, erected in those years in Paris. Perhaps these are only assumptions of historians, but considering the country of origin of the architect, they are not groundless. Resolution of governor is the following. Of course, it would be desirable that the plan and construction of the cathedral would remain with Mr. Gourdet, knowledge, experience, and taste of which can serve as a guarantee that the cathedral will be durable, will cost inexpensively, will be built soon, and in its appearance will be really a temple of God and will become a decoration for the city of Verney. The damaging earthquake of 1887 brought corrections to Gourdet's plans. Then, 1,800 stone buildings were leveled to the ground while about 800 wooden constructions were not damaged. The city administration began to look for alternative stone and brick buildings for the cathedral. Moreover, the city administration appointed engineer Andrei Zenkov to be responsible for the design of the project. He was experienced, a certified builder who had a good reputation in the construction of previous buildings. And when he was an engineer, he led almost all major construction projects after that damaging earthquake. And even in those cases where the architecture authorship is accurate, it is seen from documents that it belongs to Gourdet. Then Gourdet, as an architect and more of an artist, probably did not even know these details of special complexities of seismic structure. And probably Zinkov was designing according to his drawings and projects.
строительства, возможно, даже и не знал. А строил по его чертежам, может быть, по его проектам,
As a building material, Zharkent decided to use blue shrink spruce while increasing the structure to unthinkable heights of 45 meters at that time. Local forestry allowed to cut over 250 roots of blue shrink spruce. By that time, it was a tradition in the city to build houses of it. Citizens of Verny noted that blue spruce is not very susceptible to fires, which is explained by almost a complete lack of combustible pitch in its wood pulp. Zharkent ensured the strength of constructions by the reinforcement of rafters rigidly connected to the bundle at the top. Also, other changes were made in the project. Bell towers for the fortress were made not with octagonal, domed, but quadrahedral bulbous. The foundation was given special attention for ventilation of the bottom deck of the walls, which often amenable to rotting and fungus. Ventilating ducts were equipped, simultaneously serving for seismic waves quenched during the earthquake. Architect Almaz Ordubayev, who supervised the reconstruction of the Ascension Cathedral in 1972, at that time, no less than 65 years since the beginning of construction, does not hide admiration for Zharkent's ideas.
Каждой колонии снаружи, под полом,
There were ventilation ducts to each column outside and under the floor, and they lifted inside the column, that is, it was constant ventilation. Moreover, connected to heating systems on the roof, they had outputs so that the ventilation was constantly working. When we peeled off this plaster, we were shocked by perfectly preserved hewn brick, as if yesterday they were cut, made, and hewn. It was light, clean, there were no insects, no cockroaches, no rot on the wood. There was nothing.
Светлый, чистый, ни одного вообще, ни букашки, ни таракашки, ни гнили, ничего.
An important aspect was the decorative design of the exterior. The difficulty was that the wooden walls, domes, and tents had to be imitated for traditional materials: brick, stone, and gilding. The experience of Russian wooden architecture with blackened log outlines was not suitable here. According to the author's idea, the temple was to be colorful and airy. As a result, the architectural design resembled just three styles popular in those days. So in shape and coloring of the dome, Byzantine motifs, colorful glass paintings, a clear sign of neo-Gothicism were traced. But if we imagine a building without domes and crosses, we will get a vivid example of classical Russian manor house of the early 19th century in the Empire style.
Сопоставив все факты, приходит на ум одна мысль. Это русский модерн.
Having compared all the facts, one thought comes to mind. This is Russian modern. What is more, this Russian modernist style is a style that has not been fully developed. It was interrupted by the First World War and October Revolution. Because there were already other aspirations, other trends, there was already Cubism, the avant-garde. However, this is Russian modern. By the way, this can be seen on these roof coverings, which are not characteristic of temple paintings. Well, I must say, this eclecticism of Asia and Europe turned out very interesting.
Очень интересно получилось. Такая эклектика Азии и Европы.
Andrei Zharkent was so eager to ease the building and thereby reduce the danger in the event of earthquakes that he refused alabaster molding and ornaments on the ceilings and walls, replacing them with those made from papier-mâché, that is, paper. One of the legends says that the cathedral was built without a single nail, but this is nothing more than a myth. A well-known Kazakhstani photographer, Valery Koronchuk, checked his hypotheses at first hand. In 1984, I climbed the bell tower underneath the very cross, and just where all of those logs converge, I climbed through the cross connection into the dome, on which this cross is located. I climbed there like a cat, and when I climbed back, I remembered about all these nails. The cathedral is plastered, and all these nails get out much from there. I was stuck, I rushed, I tore my pants, But nevertheless, I cursed all these art historians and guides who spoke that the cathedral is built without a single nail. And then I learned that it's just a Russian idiom, without a single nail. It is a skill of people who created such a thing. They talked about carpenters who worked and put log huts without a single nail.
Плотники, которые работали и ставили избы, про них так и говорили, без единого гвоздя.
Contrary to the established popular rumor, more than 170 poods of ironware were used in the cathedral's construction, and this is no less than 2,720 kilograms of nails. Original constructions of the high-rise building ensured the reliability of structure during the 10-point earthquake of 1911.
Остались записи, газетные записи того времени. Действительно,
Records and newspaper notes of that time had remained. Indeed, this was practically the highest building of Verny at that time. Moreover, this tallest building stayed on. As to damages, the glass cracked up and the cross fell from the bell tower's dome. That is, the damage of the cathedral was minimal.
упал крест. То есть повреждения собора были минимальны.
October Revolution and the changes that followed it radically affected the fate of the temple. At the peak of its original destiny in 1927, the new power placed a museum of the history of religion and atheism in it. 2 years later, the city administration decided to open a radio station in the cathedral. It was here on the main dome the first radio antenna in Almaty was installed, transmitting a signal from Moscow. Within the walls of the temple, the radio station did not last long. Soon it was transferred to another building, and the cathedral was transformed again. This time, the Republican Museum of the local lore was located there, which demanded a more reconstruction of the building. Bright, festive domes were repainted in dark brown color. The walls were painted in pink. At the eastern entrance to the temple, a 3-meter monument to Comrade Stalin and Comrade Lenin were erected. Agitation banners were deployed over the porch. These attributes of Soviet power have become inseparable companions of the cathedral for the next decades. Ironically, or by a stroke of luck, Zharkent was again involved in the building reorganization in 1934. He made constructions because here he made 2 to 3-storied exhibition halls not to be connected with the walls of the cathedral. So when they were dismantled, the cathedral remained in the same original form in which it was. In process of the cathedral's adaptation to the Museum of History and the local lore, the whole internal space was transformed so much that it was hardly possible to determine its original layout. Here there were such amazing panoramas of an ancient man, panorama of the nature of Kazakhstan. There was a second floor. Here in the middle, literally in the air, the yurt was hung, representing culture and the life of Kazakhstan of past times.
Юрта представляет быт, жизнь Казахстана прошлых времен.
Zharkent managed to keep the ceiling murals, masking them with cover and coating, as well as a colorful mosaic of the floors, which, by the way, have also quite an interesting story. Decorative tile, which was used for the floor decoration, was brought from the German city Kachel, hence, by the way, the Russian word tile. For more than a century-old history, the paint has not worn away. The fact is that the pigment of the pattern strings the entire thickness of 2-centimeter ceramic tiles without changing its configuration. At that time, the architect had to solve one more difficult task: to connect the building to electricity. Adhering to his concept of not making the building too heavy, Zharkent recurred to the principle of imitation again. The gypsum bases for the sockets were again replaced with paper mache, which greatly facilitated the weight of the structures.
Классическое папье-маше – это бумажная масса, которая,
Classic paper mache is a paper mass which is chopped very finely, and they were very wide sheets, sometimes of the half palm's breadth, and we could even see the dates on some newspapers where this paper mache was made. Well, these are absolutely amazing things.
совершенно потрясающие вещи.
The museum was located here until 1985, after which it began to swiftly change the host. In the next decade, the Central Museum of Kazakhstan, the Museum of History of Architecture of Almaty, Directorate of Art Exhibitions, Society of Monuments Preservation, and even the concert and exhibition hall were here.
Вот здесь была сцена на Амвоне.
There was a scene on the pulpit. Especially there were a lot of concerts for children, lectures and concerts, subscription system, dozens, hundreds of concerts. It is all the 80s, the beginning of the 90s.
Это все 80-е, начало 90-х годов.
In 1995, authorities of Kazakhstan decided to restore the building to religious significance, and after the restoration work in the temple, the Orthodox services were held again. Today there is another restoration. Works on improving the appearance of the cathedral will continue throughout the year. Then we'll move inwards.
Цель реставрации – это, используя самые современные достижения науки, как можно
The purpose of
точнее
restoration is to preserve and implement as accurately as possible the original intent of those who built it using the most modern achievements of science. Our restoration is aimed precisely at 1907, on that version of the Ascension Cathedral as it was originally conceived by its authors.
был изначально задуман его авторами.
It is expected that by the end of 2018, the Ascension Cathedral will completely update both the exterior and interior decoration, thereby opening a new landmark in its history. The Ascension Cathedral is located in the park of 28 Panfilov Guardsmen, once referred to as the Stroyklad Bishchensky and later Pushkin. The south side of it looked out upon on the Governor's Street, where a few years earlier, women's and men's gymnasiums had been built. The inhabitants of the city were obliged to the first Governor General of Turkestan Territory, Konstantin Petrovich von Kaufmann, for the men's gymnasium appearance in Verny. At first, the college was located in the mansion of the merchant Alimov, but later a separate room was built for it, 3 stone buildings connected by galleries. The building was an exact copy of the Tashkent Gymnasium, which was designed by the architect Viktor Yanchevsky. This shot, dating from 1887, is one of the first photographs of Verny's men's gymnasium. This way, and it looks this way nowadays. It is useless to look for a similarity to the old picture. Now it is a completely different structure. The first building of the gymnasium was destroyed to the ground by the earthquake in 1887. The governor's house, which was standing a little further away, fell together with it.
Это землетрясение, которое дало, совершенно уникальный опыт.
This earthquake gave a completely unique experience for city builders, and the experience accordingly and led to the fact that it became clear that it was forbidden to build stone buildings, because all stone buildings above the ground floor had been completely destroyed, and even one-story buildings.
Одного этажа все абсолютно были разрушены, да даже одноэтажные, в общем, плохо себя повели.
Paul Gourdet was involved in the project of the gymnasium. He put the motifs of Russian classicism and stylistic trends of the late 19th, early 20th centuries in the basis of compositional solution. The new building was a symmetrical rectangle flanked by lateral stone wings. The construction of the wooden center was completed by May of 1895, and already in September the classes had begun. At that time, the director of the gymnasium, Matvey Vakrushev, wrote the following lines about Paul Gourdet. I would be unfair to him if I had not mentioned his unusual and unselfish readiness to serve the gymnasium with his technical knowledge in civil engineering. All plans and designs of the buildings for the gymnasium presented to the trustee of the West Siberian Educational District were compiled by Mr. Gourdet free of charge. but this does not fully exhaust his services, voluntarily rendered and always willingly provided by him for the construction and repairing engineering of the gymnasium. High ceilings, large windows, spacious auditoriums, all this gives a unique academic atmosphere to this building. Here you really want to stay as long as possible. You want to study, to be here, to communicate with your professors. The exterior design of the building matches the interior decoration. To plastic composition of the facade, the author introduced head moldings with shelves decorating the windows of the ground floor, channeled pilasters arranged in the place of the log's release, and decorative details in the form of a small ledge above the window and door apertures. In these stylistic decisions, the motifs of Baroque and Classicism are guessed. When this building existed as a men's gymnasium, such famous personalities as Frunze, Tokash Bokin, Jandosov, Baribayev were educated here. There were such persons who are known to the current generation as leaders of Kazakhstan. The first major changes in the men's gymnasium building went on in the 1930s when the architects Stankevich and Lvov completed the second floor. Presumably at the same time, a four-columned portico appeared, harmoniously combining new and old elements. The second major reconstruction took place quite recently in this building in 2014 on the eve of the opening, the second in the world and the first branch of Sorbonne Paris Institute in Central Asia. The top 10 universities around the world, including Sorbonne, which is located in the city of Paris, that is called l'École de Paris, l'Île de Paris. There is also Notre Dame de Paris. Both Oxford and Cambridge universities, like Sorbonne, prefer ancient buildings. The exterior decoration of the gymnasium has remained the same, but the interior has changed dramatically. The floor and columns were faced with marble, the ceilings were decorated with plaster moldings, and modern lamps were replaced with courteous Baroque. Helical banisters with wooden handrails reminded about the former times. It is a stylistic marker of the Soviet era. However, these changes in no way derogate from the merits of the building. When you see such buildings as Sorbonne Kazakhstan Institute, or if you look to the right at the cathedral, you are so devoted to the way people could have such great construction at that time. Years pass and they do not lose their face for centuries. The men's gymnasium of Verny was once part of a large student building which also included a boarding house built in 1907. The squat building on a stone basement under an iron roof consisted of 11 rooms with radiator heating. It was built from already familiar shrank spruce, and the junctions of the logs were also decorated with channeled pilasters. The interior decoration of the building could not boast of special delicacies, however this was not demanded from Gourdet. Nevertheless, creative nature did not allow the architect to completely abandon the original design solutions. Thanks to this, today it is still possible to see the stucco molding preserved in the interiors in the form of belts and ceiling rods. There is a basement under the main building. This place has its own unique atmosphere and amazing history. In 1934, when many of our historical figures were subjected to repression, Yuri Dombrovsky was hiding here, and after that he wrote his book, The Guardian of Antiquities. By that time, the boarding house was already a Semiriecheskaya public library named after the 10th anniversary of the Kazakh SSR. After 7 years, it was renamed into Pushkinskaya, and under this name it will be known until 1971. Later, at all written sources, the library will be listed as a Children's Republican Library, and since 1996, the surname of classic of Kazakh literature, Sapargali Bigalin, will be added to its title.
Алғашында жұмысқа тұрған кезде бұл ғимараттың соншалықты тарихы көне екенін байқаған жоқпын.
When I obtained employment, I did not even think that this building has such an ancient history. But working in this library, I began to find out what was hiding in its walls. I began to learn its richest history, which can be shown to the next generations. I'm glad that I work in this building.
Архитектуралық тарихы бар ғимарат есебінде санаймын. Осы мекемеде мен жұмыс істеп жатқаныма өте қуаныштымын.
It is hardly possible that Andrei Zinkov could assume that his engineering miracle will survive all twists and turns of the elements and history, and even in the 21st century, will remain the largest architectural gem in the crown of the city. And Paul Gourdet hardly thought that the boarding house he had built and in which he taught French for 15 years would eventually become the Hermitage of Paris University. But history ordered this way. And today these guardians of past epochs majestically look at the city with glossy eye sockets of windows, unshakable and as grandiose as they were on the day of their discovery.